Hello, welcome to the BIM Student. I'm your host Chetna Chauhan. There is a very famous quote by my favorite architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. You can either use eraser on a drafting table or a sledgehammer on construction site. In today's scenario, I would reframe this as you can either do a pre-construction clash detection or lose money on a construction site. Our today's guest is going to give us a sneak peek into BIM side of things from a general contractor's perspective. She entered Canadian construction industry as a pursuits coordinator, but due to her interest in technology and optimization, she shifted path to virtual design and construction. Currently, she's working at Ellisdon as VDC Manager, Enterprise Technical Solution, where her job is to make sure that everyone at Ellisdon who needs VDC tools gets them and knows how to make the best use of them. As a past board of director at Canadian Association of Women in Construction and co-chair of construction management think tank at CanBIM, she is the advocate of women in technology and construction. Please welcome Alena Tokareva. Welcome, Alena. Thank you so much for saying yes to this podcast. You're my first female guest, and I am so excited to talk to you about everything BIM and everything that I have to learn from a contractor's point of view about BIM.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with your brief introduction, your background. How did you stumble upon BIM? Did you actually have a formal education, or you, like me, you were just thrown into it? Let's start with that.
So my formal education started with an architectural school. Mm-hmm. And while I did enjoy the education in general, by the time I was graduating, I was pretty confident that I don't want to do this for a living ever in my life. However, I did go through different sort of courses, including some software. And we had an option at the time to choose between ArchiCAD and AutoCAD. And to me, it was a no-brainer, not because I thought that, BIM is the future or this is the technology. No, I was just lazy. And I thought that, ArchiCAD makes more sense. It's more efficient. I just need to build the model and I'm done. That's it. Just sounds fantastic. So that's how I started getting into that part, into the software part of architecture. By the time I was graduating, I figured that I need to pivot a little bit, and I do understand this portion, so I need to upgrade this knowledge that I have to move into something else. So at that point, I moved to Canada and went for a construction management course, mostly because a BIM course did not exist at the time. But I did hear those wonderful buzzwords, BIM and that technology will be big. And I also heard about LEED and how it will be making the industry more efficient. To me, that sounded like two parts of the same focus. You're trying to make the industry more efficient, reduce the amount of waste that you create. And BIM was just something that was more familiar to me, something that I understood a little bit better. I did get my LEED accreditation at the time, but I still chose to go into technology. And my first job was not a BIM job. I went for a pursuit coordinator position. And shortly after, I switched into a BIM position as soon as it was available in my company at the time.
So I think your first BIM job was with Ellisdon, right?
Nope.
Oh.
So I started, just let me go down the timeline. I started working for Walsh Canada in 2013. I worked as a pursuits coordinator for about half a year, maybe a little bit longer. And after that, they said, well, listen, you kind of talked about BIM. You sounded like you want to do it. Do you want to do it? I said, yeah, sure. It was literally 2 minutes of an offer. In 2 minutes, my destiny was decided. So while I was with Walsh, I worked on several projects. As it was a junior position for me, I was mostly helping out with projects that were already set up. There was some coordination for TTC station. There was some modeling and coordination for hospital renovation projects. I also worked on wastewater projects. So it's been a variety of things where I kind of dipped my toes into the water, figured out what I like, what I don't like. And then when I felt that I'm ready to grow and I want something bigger, I moved to Ellisdon and worked on a project I cannot talk about because unfortunately the most interesting and cool projects are confidential and I can't tell much about it other than it was a pharma. So it's MEP heavy, very congested systems, a lot of coordination, a lot of design coordination. So that was an interesting part of what I was doing. However, after I completed that project, I moved in a different role. So now I'm working in a position where I put together best practices, technical documentation, help others to learn, best ways of implementing technology. So I teach both VDC coordinators and everybody across Ellisdon how to use it, what's the best way of using technology, and what solutions to choose for their type of project.
Oh, that's amazing. And the one word that you used right now was VDC. And I have seen this word being interchangeably used in the industry with BIM. But I know there's a difference. But I want to hear it from your mouth. What is the difference between BIM and VDC?
Oh, here we get into philosophy and fight over the terminology. It is pretty confusing in the industry in general. And to be honest with you, right now there is a bit of a shift from those two terms, and I'll talk about it in a second. But to me, BIM and VDC is something that people recognize by now. So we're happy that people recognize these acronyms. So let's stick to them just because we spent 20 years on teaching everybody what it is. And even with BIM, it's kind of tricky because depending on who you ask, it could be the model itself as a deliverable, that's data-rich 3D model that you would use for something, or for some, it's a process of creating that model. How do you establish that terminology? We're in Canada, we still don't have any, standard mandate, anything that we agree on. But in general, most of us usually, with a lot of ifs and buts, agree that BIM is the product, it's the model. When we talk about GC side of things, there is much more that goes into that model. I need to create platforms that will be supporting interoperability process and would help me to bring that model to my site. There are additional things that we will put into the model, any point clouds, any laser scan or drone data that we want to include into the model. If we start introducing sensor data, it becomes enriched with something else, and we don't only support the model itself, but we also learn external applications and figure out how to build them into our process. So we switch into this virtual design and construction workflow, just because we want to have a wider room for our R&D and what we actually are trying to do. However, we've all heard, or most of us have heard those new technology buzzwords, digital twins, IoT, all the cool things that technology is bringing to us. So there's been quite a shift towards digital construction or integrated construction technology. And again, there are a lot of ways of calling this process. It's, in general, construction process supplemented by technology. Figure out how you want to call it, agree on something, and just keep using it.
Yeah, I think as long as we get the process right, it does matter what you call it, because again, it comes down to definitions and T's of it. But yeah, I think we need to get the process right first before we do get the definition right. One thing that I have always, because I talk to architects, MEP engineers, structural engineers, contractors like yourself. I talk to everybody on a daily basis, and I find that there is between all these parties, there is a very there's a lot of complaint happening that, oh, designers don't do this, engineers don't do this, oh, why are contractors asking for this? So I'm here representing, because I am an architect, and even though I have all this cool technology behind me, in the core of my heart, I am still an architect. So if you, somebody coming from contracting, has to give me an advice while I'm working on a BIM deliverable, what would your advice will be to me?
Okay. Before I get to dirty secrets and accusing people, okay, just let's make it clear that I'd like to acknowledge that no one intentionally sets up to do a bad job.
Right.
We all want to do the best, and we all want to be praised for what we do. Right. And as you said, it's all about the process. Unfortunately, we're in a position where the industry has been doing the same thing for, I don't know, 75 years. I haven't been around for so long, so I don't know, but for me, it's virtually forever. It's been done in a certain way forever. And now we have this technology that we're trying to kind of use to replace the traditional process, but we don't really replace. We just make the same things, but with digital tools. And I'd like to quote Ellisdon's CEO and the president, Jeff Smith, with my favorite quote of all time. You can't digitize 1985. You can't be doing the same drafting, but with a computer, and expect that it will work differently. Right now, we are unfortunately trapped in that old business model where we don't have proper communication channels. And as you said, the whole whining comes from, oh, this a dumb builder doesn't understand what they're asking for. Oh, this sloppy consultant that doesn't do the things that they're supposed to do. The whiny trade that is always whining about incomplete documentation. The whole the whole problem is that we don't talk to each other enough. We don't know what were the other people actually looking for when we gave them our beautiful thing of a job that we thought is perfect, right? So one very important thing that you should do, if you can, if your contract allows it, talk to people. Ask, what do you actually need when you're asking me for this thing? And of course, it's not always possible. So network, find some sort of association, some sort of software networking groups where you can ask questions and say, listen, I'm giving you this. Is it actually that something that you can actually use, or would you prefer me to do things differently? And to be frank with you, we as an industry are learning, and the quality of models we started to receive in the past couple of years did increase. So we are learning, we are figuring it out. However, I guess the dirtiest secret of the whole process is that we were sold this dream that, we'll build the model, we'll keep adding things to it, we'll keep improving it and replacing some parts of it. The reality of things is that if you, a consultant, are giving me this beautiful, over-detailed LOD 350 model, it goes to garbage. The moment I receive it, I scrap it and replace it with something that is more accurate. And it may be a little bit less for architecture and structural, just because, we care about high level of things. We care about how things fit together. I don't care about pots with flowers. I don't care how you arrange some of the finishes. If they don't affect grand scheme of things, I just hide them for my purposes until I need to pull them back for asset management or that kind of things. But for MEP systems specifically, it becomes a much, much bigger problem, because I'll give you a couple of examples. One, just because you design something or just because you model something a certain way doesn't mean that we will build it this way. Not because we can't, but because it's wasteful. So I can't tell you how many models I've seen where electrical cable tray is like a roller coaster. Can we build it? Sure, sometimes if the code allows. Quite often it doesn't. But also if the code allows and we can build it, it's going to be golden. The client doesn't want to pay that much. Just because you coordinated and made it clash-free doesn't mean that it's an efficient way to build, okay? So that's one part of it. The other part is that mechanical models especially, or process piping or any prefab system is not optimized for fabrication. Let's talk about ducts. You model this large duct, fantastic. Are your flanges correct? Correct meaning, are they spaced for the fabrication equipment that the trade would have? Are your hangers that you inserted are engineered? Did you calculate them, or did Revit place them at random places where it thought it should place a hanger, you know? So things like that make it easier for us to redo the model from scratch than trying to adjust something in the consultant's model. And that is very unfortunate. That creates a ton of waste in the process. And this is just heritage of the old delivery model. You know, it's not something that you do intentionally to, you know, make the client pay twice. No, of course not. It's just what we're working with.
You know what? Like when you're talking about all this, I go back to a job that I was doing. It was a project I was working on back when I was in IBI, and we were talking about all these clash detections, and so we did clash detections on our part because we had in-house architecture, MEP, structure, everything. But then I saw the contractor did their clash detection, which was really different than the clash detection that we did, and it opened my eyes to that. Do we even need to do a clash detection on every deliverable or every month or every week? Do we even need to do that? Because anyways, contractors are looking at clash detection in a very different way than we are looking at it. So who do you think is responsible for clash detection on a project?
Everyone. But again, that brings me to this wonderful discussion of what is a clash. What do you call a clash, right? What is important? So when you are a consultant, when you are when you are coordinating your systems while there are design intent models, you should be coordinating high level of systems. Okay, me as a builder, I care that there is enough space in that corridor to squeeze in all the systems. You may not know where all the flanges are, but you know how big the duct is, right? So at least you need to reserve enough space for the systems. So that part is fantastic. For some things like user access points or certain things like, I don't know, outlets or whatever connections in the room that user will be working with, I definitely want my designer to coordinate those things, because I as a builder don't care where to install it. You know, the wall is big, I'll just squeeze it in wherever it fits. You either tell me or it goes randomly. However, after you do that, the builder, the GC contractor, they will do their own clash detection for two reasons. One, that we would replace systems with fabrication systems, and two, that we are carrying that risk. We need to make sure that it's perfect before we get to it, because we are paying for rework, right? So even if you do your clash detection perfectly, I'll double check. Not because I don't trust you, but I'll pay for it if there is something that you missed.
Right. No, and I think also because when an architect or a structural engineer or an MEP designer, when they are designing, they don't have interaction with fabricators as much as you guys do. And I don't believe that going on a site for once in a month or once whenever required replaces what a general contractor, site supervisor, site inspector, or people who are on site actually building it replaces for that. Like, that's a different kind of experience in itself too. And I don't think architects or designers are in general trained for that kind of work.
Yes, and also it is part that you learn at a job, I think, where you need to ask questions. You know, even I've seen a lot of consultants coming for an inspection, not asking any questions, just walking through the building, walking out, not asking a single question. Everybody is very friendly typically. If you tell somebody, wow, you do such a cool job, tell me more about this because I didn't think that this works this way. they'll love to school you.
Oh,
They'll love to
okay.
educate you if they have time, if they're not running by. Okay, there will be a couple of people that will say no and just turn away and walk away. But if you ask questions, people are willing to share. So that definitely helps. And I talked to a couple of designers who were saying, but how do I know how the model will be replaced and how the fabrication model is different? Well, did you ever ask them to show you? That's why I keep saying networking. It's fantastic. Sometimes you learn more things than you work at your workplace just because everybody feels safe. They don't feel like you're trying to take advantage of them. So they'll just spill all their sorrows and tell you everything you did wrong or your colleague did wrong. It's a fantastic opportunity to learn.
Yes, I fully agree with you. So I think taking from the whole discussion, one thing that comes out really well from this discussion is that, and it goes back to actually the first podcast that we had with Brett Mouty, that there's nothing called over communication. You have to communicate, you have to ask questions, you have to clearly state the intent of what you're doing and why you're doing that. So yeah, this is my takeaway from this whole discussion that I have with you. And I have so many other questions. Like, this is not the I won't say the discussion has ended. I feel this discussion with my discussion with everybody has just started, and I would want to take it to the next level in future episodes. Right now we have the third section coming up, and that's the impossible questionnaire. Are you ready for it?
Also known, today I learned part of the episode. Sure.
Yes.
I'm ready to be humble.
Okay, I'm humbled. Let's start with our impossible questionnaire. My first question: what is the thickness of concrete slab that is normally placed on the base of a compacted sand?
No clue. I'll go to specs. I don't improvise.
Okay. It is 4 to 6 inches.
Okay, 100 mil. Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Okay. Okay, what is, I think you should know it, but let's see. In a residence or in a house, what is the minimum level of finished floor above the grade?
Never worked with residential. Don't know.
8 inches.
8
You
inches,
cannot
fantastic.
have the finished floor level of your residence less than 8 inches from the grade level.
Okay, good to know.
Okay. So this is all coming from our OPC and the specs and everything. See, I am so glad I'm doing this because I'm learning so much out of the whole process. Okay.
To be honest with you, if there are any questions about residential, I'll be just...
Okay, there are no
blank.
more questions about residential after this. Okay. In CCDC 2, what are supplemental instructions?
What are supplemental? Not gonna be able to answer that either. Supplemental instructions, CCDC 2. Enlighten me.
So, supplemental instructions are the adjustments in contract price and contract time in forms of specification, model, drawing, schedules, samples, and written instructions. So if you had any, after initial contract, if you had any adjustments in the contract price or contract time, those are supplemental instructions.
Good to know, but also see that's the contract that is the enemy of collaboration and communication. So hope that changes.
I hope so too. I think there is a lot of discussion and work in the industry going around that if we are working in a technology-rich environment, we really need to change the language of our contracts too. So yeah, I hope to see good change in the future.
Right, but if you don't mind, I'll comment on that change also. There is the new CCDC document for IPD that is out. Have you seen the schedule for BIM requirements there?
I haven't. Send me the document. I will see.
Will do. So the funny thing is that it says schedule something, BIM requirements. You go to the schedule, it does not exist. You start going through the list of schedules and it says, insert your BIM execution plan here. So, you know, it's the answer to the requirements is 42. Anything you want it to be.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think there has to be standardization around that, or at least a common agreement around that. But and that's why I've named my podcast The BIM Student, because none of us is expert right now. We're all students learning to navigate through this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, what is CCDC 11?
Was it unit price? Never worked with unit price, so I think it's one of those.
No, it's not unit price.
No.
So it is contractor's qualification statement. Basically, if you qualify for that job, what are the basis of those qualifications?
Okay.
So my last question, what building code or standards do we follow while designing electrical layout of a building in Canada?
ESA? The ESA standards?
CSA, but do you know the part number?
No. No, it's
so it's
not
CSA 22.1.
Or right.
And we or alternately we also follow NFPA, which is like the US standard, but we follow that too. So any one of these.
See, here I'll tell my dirty secret. My superpower as a VDC person on site is that in the beginning of every process, I go to my electrical or mechanical trade and say, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. Tell me, what are the most important standards for me to know to make your life easier? And they give you everything.
Wow.
Because they have information about the latest codes which apply in the area. So I don't need to search for anything. And if you give a promise to somebody that, you know, there is a potential for me making your life easier, they're very willing to educate you.
Yeah,
so
I
again,
agree with that. I agree with that.
Talk and be humble.
Yes.
So
yeah, I think we all need to work on that.
It
need
is
to
difficult.
Be comfortable asking more questions. You know what? This is one of the best discussions I've had on the podcast. I've learned so much today. It has also reinforced my belief in transparent communication. Ask questions. You're not stupid if you're asking a question. You're just curious. So I think, goes back to very basics of what highly successful people say, that be diligent, ask questions. There's nothing like over communication, and be ready to learn and be humble. So I think I've a lot of my beliefs you've reinforced, and I've learned a lot today. Do you have something last to say before we call it?
To couple things to this. One, I have a bit of advertising if you're interested in that.
Oh, sure.
Shameless plug, not of myself personally, but I'm a co-chair of CanBIM construction management think tank. And we are working on a presentation, a training, if you will, whatever it will be. It's going to be a 2-hour lecture presented by one of the board members, Dan, on waste in BIM process. So it's exactly talking about how different delivery processes create waste in the process. It's a really cool presentation, a lot of pop culture memes in the presentation. So if you think it's going to be boring, it's not going to be boring, I promise. And I think it's a really interesting presentation to keep an eye on. It's going to be presented probably in fall, I think. Don't have a specific date yet. So keep an eye on CanBIM events. And the second thing, to your point about asking questions, I think there is a different dynamic in builders environment versus engineering and architectural world, because generally the crowd that you work with is different age groups. So most consultants I worked with are my age, younger. Most builders that I worked with are twice my age. So typically I was in a situation where I'm the only girl in the room, or one of very few, and I'm the youngest. So it's very easy to play a dumb card, very easy. Even if you know the answer, but you want others to learn things, you just say, hey, I have a stupid question. You just need to be comfortable with saying that. But also it creates this environment where I don't compete with those people really. And I just allow them to be in that, role of the elder person who is there to teach you. Some people really appreciate that and are willing to teach you. And I think I was extremely lucky with one of my senior MEP managers, Paul Verhagen. Just love that guy for saying the thing. Right in the beginning of the process, he said, those young people are impossible. They don't ask any questions. How do you learn if you don't ask questions? I said, well, we started asking stupid questions and then you think that we're idiots. He said, of course you're idiots. I think that you're idiots no matter you ask questions or you do. But if you're asking questions, I know that you want to get smarter and I'm gonna help you.
Wow, I will remember that. Yeah, that was one. Of course, yes, of course. Like I have what, 15, 16 years of work ex. I can't compete with somebody who's in the industry for 30 years. I can't. And I should be humble enough to admit that that person knows more than me. I might know the piece of technology better than him, but he knows the scheme of affairs better than me. Yeah, thank you so much, Alena. It was such an enlightening discussion for me, and I'm looking forward for many such discussions with you. So I'm definitely bringing you back for another episode.
Thank you.